From the badge on the chest to the suit and tie, from the sweat on the steel to the public eye, clocking out the job, laying down the weight. Open up the mic, set the record straight. Tell me, who are you, brother? Tell me, who are you, sister? Tell me, who are you, boss? Getting down to the truth when the blue comes off.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Deshonda Carter here, but you can call me DC. Thanks so much for Japers. Yes. You know, that little cheer be the highlight of my show. That I got little antics going on over here, so I'm really happy about that. I hear an echo on my end. Do you hear echo on your end?
I do not have any echoes on my end.
Okay, so hopefully and prayerfully, guys, you know, technology and we trying to work it out over here. So please bear with me if you do hear an echo when this recording comes up. We're going to try to fix it, but in the meantime, we're going to jump right into it. Hey, Bernie, how you doing? I thank God that I'm still here for another day, so I'm excited about that. So let's get into your story. You started in law enforcement and you started out as a New York State corrections officer for about what, 10 years? So what made you go into that line of work? How did that come about? Like, did you grow up and say, hey, I'm going to be a CO? Like, how did that come about?
You want to know, ever since I was in probably the fourth, fifth grade, I had made the determination that the decision that I was going to go into law enforcement. So my whole goal all the way through school was to get into law enforcement one way or the other. And fortunately for me, my senior year in high school, I took a security and law enforcement course, the first kind of its type in New York State back in 1980, 81, through the Orange Ulster County BOCES vocational school. And there was a retired police officer who started a security and law enforcement course. And he just brought in different guest speakers with different law enforcement backgrounds so that we as kids could see the different law enforcement jobs out there. One of the other things this instructor, Artie Doyle, was good at was getting us to take civil service exams, whether we were interested in the job or not, just getting practice taking civil service exams. So at 17, I took the test for New York State Correction Officer. I actually wrote a 90 on that test, and they actually offered me, I actually got called off the list when I was 18 years old. So I was one of those 18-year-old correction officers they hired back in the 80s. So
working in a state facility with hardened criminals, how?
At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I've always been a little bit more mature for my age than other kids my age. But at that time, New York State was having a hard time hiring, so they lowered the age to 18. So that let us go in there. And I felt great. It was just a law enforcement job working. At that time, we could work all the posts because we could even work armed posts back then. Because at the time, you did not have to be 21 to handle firearms. Now, here we are almost 40 years later, and New York State's again going through another round of having a hard time hiring correction officers. They just lowered their age back to 18 again. To hire 18-year-old correction officers. The difference now versus then is now they cannot handle handguns at all. So there are a number of posts that they can't work. Versus
well, I'm sure
when I went in, I could
wouldn't
work
matter
those posts.
as long as they get them hired and can get on some of those other posts. Then we don't have those issues.
Right. They can work any non-armed post that doesn't have handguns involved. But at any place else in the facility, they can work.
So at 18 years old, you did that for 10 years. So you left corrections at 28. So during that time, what was the highlight of your career during that time? Like
But the best day during those 10 years, credit corrections with a lot of the success that I've had throughout my law enforcement career. So during those 10 years, I worked various facilities ranging from medium security facilities to the first super maximum security facility in New York State. I was also fortunate enough to be part of our crisis intervention unit, which is basically the hostage negotiating team for the Department of Corrections. And during that 10-year period, I was deployed a few times. The most notable deployment was to Coxsackie Correctional Facility when they took the hostages up in the special housing unit, and I got to work that hostage situation for a couple of days. So that would be the highlight during that 10 years.
Situation like you must have had a high adrenaline because I don't know if I want to be in a hostage unit. Like what? Corrections areas, which you
Yes.
did,
Yes.
right? Tell me a bad day in corrections for you.
Bad day in corrections, but the one thing that you learn in corrections is being fair, firm, and consistent. Stick to those 3 rules and you will have a successful career. The other thing you learn is leave your personal life at the gate when you go into work. Don't let things distract you because that's when you're going to get hurt. So the one bad day I had, me and one of the bosses were having a heated disagreement on who should be going to certain training. And I was the person that was not going to that training. And I was so hung up focused on that. When I went back up to the special housing unit, my mind wasn't where it should have been. And I ended up with a couple of stitches in my head after rolling around with an inmate that I should have saw coming if my head was in the game instead on this training session I wanted. So that was my bad day.
Let's talk about the stitches. Let's talk about these stitches here. So you were not paying attention and somebody bopped you upside your head.
It was a special housing officer, inmate that we were taking out of the cell. And because this was a super maximum security facility, the first of its type, they were experimenting with different ways on how to get the inmates to come out. And at that time, they just had to keep their hands in the pocket, the cell door open. They took their hands out of the pocket, and that's when we put the handcuffs on. Well, this inmate took his hands out of the pocket before he was told to and latched onto my baton, ended up yanking me in the cell, and then me and the other 2 officers I were with had to maintain control of the baton, watching out for our safety and the safety of the inmates.
So this leads me to this question. When people say segregated punitive segregation, when they're locked in 23 hours.
Yes.
Do you think, in your personal opinion, that those units are not necessary?
I'm not going to say they're not necessary. And I will say there's been instances where they've been abused. Like anything else, if things are done appropriately and within the confines of the rules, they're very beneficial. The unfortunate thing is when certain officers or certain administrators misuse it, it gives the whole program a bad name, and then people want to get rid of it.
I'm so glad you said that because that applies to any and every agency, right? So that means if someone abuses power in a certain agency, the agency itself is not to blame, but it's the person who's utilizing the abuse of power.
Correct.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you on that.
No, I continued to take civil service exams throughout my career with corrections. I was looking at corrections as a stepping stone to get into more traditional police work. And because most police agencies won't hire you until you're 21, it just made sense for me to start off in corrections. So during that 10 years, I had taken a test for the state police. I had taken a test for New York City Police Department, and I had taken the test for the New York State Environmental Conservation Police. Unfortunately, the New York State Police turned me down because of my eyes, because they had a very strict eye requirement that I failed. I chose not to take the job with NYPD, and then when Department of Conservation called, I did accept their offer and got to go through their academy. Now, to backtrack, a lot of people don't understand or know what New York State Environmental Conservation Police officers are or what they do.
Exactly. I was just getting ready to tell you, explain that to our listeners. Because, most people just think of corrections as law enforcement, police, state troopers. Tell them what that is, what that actually entails.
Me personally, I never saw a conservation officer until my senior year in high school. Again, when I was going through that security law enforcement class, and one of the guest speakers they brought in was a New York State conservation officer. And at that time, my focus was trying to become a state trooper down the road. But after I saw the presentation from the conservation officer, their job to me at that time looked more appealing. So that's what I focused my goals on trying to achieve. So basically, environmental conservation officers in other states, we'd be known as game wardens because we enforce the hunting and fishing regulations for the state. Unlike other states, New York State, our conservation officers are fully sworn police officers. So not only do we enforce the fish and game rules of New York State, we enforce all the environmental laws in New York State, and that includes solid waste. We'll dispose of solid waste, hazardous waste, radioactive waste. We regulate the wetlands in the state of New York. Anything that falls under the environment falls under the jurisdiction of the New York State DEC.
Wow. So you protected the environment, basically,
Yes.
with a gun.
Yes. And it's funny you say that because, you get that all the time. Why does conservation officer need a gun? Why do you guys carry guns? Are you real police? Yes, we're real police. Yes, remember I said one of the things we regulate is the solid waste industry. Okay. Anybody that's ever watched Sopranos and knows anything about the mob, they're heavily involved in the carting business. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why we carry firearms, because we do deal with unsavory people during certain law enforcement aspects of our job.
So run us through a typical day where it is a normal day and where there's a bad day.
That's going to be a little bit difficult because New York State's such a big state. So depending on where you're stationed in New York State dictates how your day is going to go. Okay, so I worked in Region 1, which is Long Island, when I first came out of the academy. So down there, a lot of our work revolved around fishing enforcement in the Marine District, solid waste complaints, dealing with gasoline tankers because we regulate vapor recovery and things like that. So for me, a typical day when I was on Long Island would be, first of all, deciding what my enforcement focus was going to be for the day. So if my focus on that day was on marine fishing, then we'd get on a boat and go out and patrol in the Long Island Sound and check fishermen fishing in the Marine District. We'd also do what we call shop inspections because we regulate lobsters and clams here in New York State. So there's a certain width the clams have to be for them to be legally sold. So we would go in and we would check to make sure that they didn't have more than 3% seed clams in their bags. Otherwise, that would be a violation.
Sounds like fun times. Sounds like fun times.
It is fun times, but and it's no different than speed enforcement when you're on radar. So you're only allowed to do 55 miles an hour. Well, we're not going to give you. Most cops are not going to give you a ticket for going 3 or 4 miles over the speed limit. So same thing when we're doing the clam enforcement. You can only have 3% seed in the bag. We're not going to actually write you a ticket because you have 3%. Now you've got 10%. 12%, you're so far over that 3, that's what you're going to get the ticket from. And those tickets would range anywhere from $250 to $5,000. Waste tickets start at $1,500 and go up to $25,000, even though they're only a violation. And that's hard for traditional police officers to wrap their head around because under the penal law, anything that's more than $250 is usually a misdemeanor.
Right.
Okay. But under the environmental conservation law, we have certain violations that start off with a minimum fine of $1,500.
That's crazy. Like, it just sounds like it's so in depth that it's not typical training, like how I imagine like corrections police. This sounds like you're out on the boat. You could be in the wilderness. You could be in the forest. You can be at the reservoirs. So how long is the academy? Like, what training do you get that allows you to have all of this capabilities to follow through?
Our training for our conservation officers really hasn't changed other than course topics, but we run an academy similar to the way the New York State Police run their academy. It's a 6-month, 28-week residential academy. And what I mean by residential academy is you report to the academy on Sunday night. You don't get to go home until Friday afternoon. And then you have to be back at the academy Sunday night for the next week for the next 28, 32 weeks, however long the academy is running, versus like the NYPD Academy is not a residential academy. So those guys get to go home every night. They get to go to class, they get to go home, have dinner with their family, blah, 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 and then they have to get back to the academy the next day. Conservation officers, like the state police and also our New York State Park Police, we run what we call residential academies. So we own you from Sunday until Friday.
So the park police, I didn't know they did that as well, residential academy.
Yes, they're more recent. They used to do local academies. Probably about 15 years ago, they started doing a residential academy like we do.
So how was the academy? Because I know I didn't do residential academy, so I'm just curious, like, what was that like to be locked in? Did they wake you up? Did they do drills in the middle of the night? Like, what was that?
Everything you just said. Okay, like I said, we own you while we have you. Now, unfortunately for my class, we were exempted from overtime, so they could mess with us anytime they wanted. Down the road, because of some lawsuits, and it was determined that we had to pay officers overtime outside of their 8-hour tours. We don't scrutinize recruits like we did in the old days, because now it's costing the state money if we wake them up 2:00 in the morning to start running them around the academy doing drills. So yeah, the younger generation has it good compared to the older generation that went through the academy when overtime was not an issue.
So I want to go back really quick though.
Go ahead.
You learned about the law enforcement through the BOCES program. Do they still have that program today?
Yes, they do. That program, let's see, in 81, that program's 43. Yeah, that 43. It's 43 years old now. I was a guest speaker every year since graduation up until my retirement, and I still make an appearance over there and talk to their students whenever I can. I'm a big fan of the program. Like I said, Artie Doyle was the first instructor who has it, and then Bob Decker's over there now. Both great guys. It's a great program. When I went through, it was a 1-year program. It advanced into a 2-year program now. And they've had a lot of success stories of people who've graduated from there and gone on to law enforcement careers, people who've gotten promotions. They've had a couple of police chiefs, their former students who were police chiefs and also hold supervisory roles. So it's been interesting. It's a great program.
And is it for all of Orange County, or is it for the Orange County high school students only?
Yep, it's part of their one of their vocational programs, and it's open to all of the school districts that are part of the Orange Ulster County BOCES system. So it's schools from Orange and Ulster counties. Now, a couple other schools have started a program since then. So I know, like Sullivan County has a law enforcement course in their vocational school, and a couple other ones have it because now they have competitions between the vocational schools, crime scene competitions, fingerprint stuff. Yeah.
Well, you have to take me over. I want to go to this. I want to go see the school.
Yeah, we can do that.
You think you can make that happen for me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
So you stayed in that position with the DEC for 30 years. Yeah? Now, what was the requirement? Was it 25 years for retirement? Was it 20 years?
25-year retirement plan. For the civilian side of the house, it's 25 years, age 55. For the law enforcement side of the house, it's 25 years in the age. So you don't have to wait till you're 55 to retire. Again, because I was 18, I hit my 25 years sooner than a lot of other people, but there were some other hurdles there. But no, it's 25 years, 50%, 32 years, 62%. Wow. If that's what you work.
Oh, but then you missed the mark because you only did 30. No, you did 40. You did 40, right?
Yes, yes, right? I did.
So you stayed 30 for the DEC, the 10 for corrections. So you actually retired with a 10-year pension. So between the two jobs that you've had with the DEC and corrections, what was your favorite?
DEC, New York State Environmental Conservation, by far was my favorite, but I'm one of the few people that you will never hear bad mouth corrections. I enjoyed my 10 years in corrections, and I've got nothing negative to say about it. Now, there are a number of conservation officers who I worked with over the years who took a similar path like me, who started off in corrections and came over to the DEC, and they hated their time in corrections. I embraced my time in corrections. Like I said, 18 years old, I never had another job. So to me, I was having, I played football and wrestled in high school. So now I'm working maximum security correction facilities, and I'm on the emergency response, what we call a red dot team. So if there's a fight someplace, I'm running to get there to break it up to do. So to me, I was having fun. Now, other people have had other jobs, like, what are we doing? Like, to me, it was like, between wrestling and football, I was having a good time.
Especially when you're young, you have that energy and vibrance, you go in there and you could say, I could do it. But I don't know. Some people just don't understand our lives.
Yep.
And for you to
Now,
be able to successfully go and transition from corrections and use what you learned from that experience and carry over into the DEC, I'm sure was very helpful for you.
yes, like I said, fair, firm, and consistent. That's where I got it from. Corrections, I carried it through the whole 40 years. It's always worked for me in every law enforcement position I've had, every supervisory position I've had, and fair, firm, consistent. That applies when you deal with the public, and that applies to the people you supervise and work with.
And I think you retired at one of the higher ranks when you left. Correct? Correct. Can you just tell us what
Correct.
rank that was?
Somewhere along the line, I got lucky. I actually retired as the director of law enforcement, overseeing our 300 plus members, sworn in civilian members in the Division of Law Enforcement.
So were you a good boss?
If you ask me,
Were you fair, firm, and consistent as a boss? Right, 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 right.
you messed up, you got to pay the consequences. Doesn't matter. We went to the academy together. Doesn't matter. We worked together as field officers. My position is here. This is your position. You messed up. You got to own it, and we got to move forward.
Was there ever a time when you had to do something that you absolutely was against, but you knew it had to be done? Like you
Yes.
mentioned supervising, someone you came on the job with, but explain to me and tell our listeners what, if you can, disclose what that was for you.
Well, the job as director of law enforcement is to oversee your sworn members and your support staff up under you. A lot of members, a lot of field members don't understand the politics involved, or they don't understand how bad the politics gets as you take more and more promotions. So New York State DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, for the most part, is a civilian organization with
Okay.
3,500 employees. Of those 3,500 employees, you've got the Division of Law Enforcement that's only 350 employees of that 3,500. Okay. So trying to get your people, especially those who are used to paramilitary organizations and used to law enforcement. Yes, I'm the director of law enforcement, but I still have bosses above me. Okay. So my job as director is to find out what the commissioner wants. And then I have to come up with how to implement his program, her program, to the field below. And just like I have a boss, the commissioner has a boss. And if the commissioner's boss, the governor, says this is what he wants, and then the commissioner comes to me and says, okay, law enforcement, this is what I want, I've got to figure out how to get my guys to understand. I may not agree with it. Behind closed doors, I fought the fight I could fight, why I didn't think it was a good idea. But at the end of the day, I work for the commissioner. This is the direction we're going in, and this is how we're going to do it.
And the reason why I wanted to point that out is because a lot of times people misunderstand when you're in authoritative position, there are decisions that have to be made or that are made that are not necessarily decisions that we want to make personally. But people have to understand that this is the job and this is what the job entails. And it's important to stress that fact, especially in this time and age, I think.
More so now than ever before.
Exactly. And some things are said that don't need to be said, but we know it. We know what we're talking about.
Yes, we do.
So talking about politics, since you talk about the politics of it, let's get into the politics. You went from retiring from law enforcement, then you decided to get into politics. You became the chairperson of the Town of Mount Hope Democratic Committee, and you're also on the Orange County Democratic Committee. Tell me what inspired you to now go into the realm of politics?
I've always been involved throughout my career, involved with politics in one way or the other, whether supporting the candidate that I want to see get elected, attending fundraisers and things like that. But again, my generation in law enforcement, we were always trained to be apolitical. Okay. So I didn't walk around and say, hey, I'm a Republican. Hey, I'm a Democrat. I'd sit and listen to everybody's conversations, keep everything general. After I retired, one of the goals I had set back in high school, when I said I want to be a state trooper, and then from that said, you know what, I want to be a conservation officer. One of the other things I talked about was one day when I retired, I'd like to run for sheriff of Orange County. And when I did retire, I threw my hat in the ring for sheriff here in Orange County. I ran as a Democrat. A lot of people were surprised I ran as a Democrat because they just assumed I was a Republican. To this day, I have people who don't speak to me anymore because I'm a Democrat, and they can't believe that they didn't know I was a Democrat. And again, why would you? Again, my generation, we were taught you're apolitical. I'm disappointed what I see in a lot of law enforcement throughout the country where people in uniform are openly letting the world know what their political views are, and they're doing things while on duty in uniform for the party that they support.
Right. And then I guess, to your point, the controversy then sets in because you're no longer respecting the law. You're looking at what the person represents. So if I'm a Democrat and that person is a Republican, but they're a Republican police officer, now do I give them that respect? No, I become combative sometimes. And what it tends to do is cause friction before they even address the reason why they're there.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I call you out, and let me just give you a scenario. Me and you were talking, we're agreeing, and again, guys, please forgive me for moving around so much today. I don't know where this echo is coming from, so maybe I just need to talk a little softer or something. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. You and I are having a great conversation. You agree, I agree. And at the end of the conversation, I divulge that I'm a Republican. Now we agreed. We were on the same page the entire conversation. But I said I'm a Democrat and you said you're a Republican. People will forget that they just agreed because of the fact that you're a Democrat. Like, those D's and those R's are ridiculous. I think if people remove them and just had conversations, we would be in a better place.
I agree with you 100% there. I think one of the biggest things that hurt me when I lost my election was to have people actually say out loud, Bernie, you would have made a much better sheriff, but I couldn't vote for you because you're a Democrat. Tell me you're not going to vote for me because you don't like my policy decision. Tell me there was something in my background you didn't like, but you didn't vote for me simply because I'm a Democrat. And the other thing is I didn't expect national politics to play the role that it played in a county race. The politics in this country is just so bad right now that people aren't even researching the candidates. They're just voting strictly party lines, and that's the people who are voting.
Unfortunately, I learned that myself. And I have to strongly suggest that people learn for themselves what people represent and don't become complacent. Like, oh, well, I've been voting this way for the last 20 years. It doesn't even matter who's there. Or they just continuously vote for the same people over and over and over again because it's easier than to try to find information out on somebody else.
And all while ignoring any scandals those people were involved in.
Woo. Wait, let me do my thing. Wait, let me see my button work. Hold on, y'all. Y'all know I like my button. Wait a minute, because scandal. I don't know if it's so much that they ignore it or it's just they don't care. Oh, it doesn't matter that he has a felony. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's a rapist. It doesn't matter. I'm just gonna vote for the party. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important that you do your research. Do you agree with me, Bernie?
I do. Do your due diligence. Think on your own.
So now you retired and you are involved heavily in politics, but you also have a business. So tell us about your business. You were a private investigation company, RTS, correct?
Correct. Rivers
Okay.
Security Training and Investigations.
What made you get into that?
Just to make sure I had something to do when I retired, keep myself busy. So basically, it's a 4-pronged thing that I'm still working on. Primary focus doing investigations, specializing in environmental investigations.
Nice.
But we do, I can do all kinds of investigations. But like I said, more focused on environmental stuff. Provide security services. That's one of the phases we're in the process of working on. And training. I love being a trainer. Throughout my career, I've been a certified instructor. I'm certified in a lot of topics. I'm also a certified master instructor through the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services. So I enjoy instructing. That's one of the things I do miss about being retired. I miss instructing at the basic school, working with the new officers just coming out. And that's, so we do offer, I'm available to help any local police departments. They want to do any in-house instructing, certified radar instructor, counterterrorism instructor. Did a number of classes through the Rockland County Police Academy when I was working. So just to keep my foot in the game.
So you keep yourself educated on the upcoming and all the new trends that the department is putting out. Do you still go back and learn and train yourself?
I always train myself. I stay on top of it. One of the things that is hard for me to fathom, the younger generation, this is nothing against the younger generation, but this younger generation wants to turn everything off when they're off duty. It just astounds me when you run into a young police officer, young correction officer, and they have no idea what's going on in the world because they don't watch the news or they don't read the newspaper. When they go off duty, they go off duty. I'll say, hey, did you see those correction officers got jammed up? What are you talking about? Dude, it's been all over the news. Where have you been? Yeah, no, this generation. And, let's backtrack to environmental conservation officers. One of the things that makes us different than traditional police officers is we don't work out of a police station. We work out of our homes. Okay. So when you get hired as a conservation officer, we give you a car. We give you all of your equipment. Okay. And you work out of your house. You live in your patrol sector and you work out of your house. You report to the regional headquarters 2, maybe 3 times a month to update your laptop, any meetings you might have with what we call program stuff. But again, when I came on, they put a phone in our house. Now everybody's got cell phones, so we give all our conservation officers a cell phone. Our phone numbers are listed in the hunting and fishing guides. So if you need a conservation officer and you live in Orange County, you just open up the guide to Orange County. It'll list all the officers that live there, and you just call one of them.
Wait a minute. So you didn't have to report. Listen, if you're young, you guys better go over there and apply and take this. Now, this is a state test, yes?
Yes.
Yes. You need to apply for this particular job because they don't have to report. There's no roll call. You just have to sign in, log in at the time. So did they have tours? Or you just were on call 20?
No, you set your tour, because that's police jargon, tour. You set your tour. You set your work schedule up based on your enforcement. Okay. So like during hunting season, big game season, deer season, bear season, you might start 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because you want to get those hunters that are going into the woods early to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. Okay. And you might break your day up. You might spend 2-3 hours doing that, go back home, go out of service, go do what you got to do, but then come back in service because you want to get those people around lunchtime. You want to go check to see if anybody's around any bait piles. The beauty of being a conservation officer, you set your work day, your work schedule around your enforcement activity. If it's not hunting season, like I was big on commercial vehicle enforcement. So there are times I didn't start until 10 o'clock in the morning because I wanted to be on the highway, grabbing the trucks that we regulate, during the peak traffic time that they were moving. So
Well,
that's like I said,
you missed talking about the good parts because that right there, that was the selling point for me. Like, are you kidding? I don't have to get up and go to roll call. I just sign in.
But again, and you've been in law enforcement long enough to know you're always going to get people that are going to screw that up.
Mess it up for everyone all the time.
Again, you work out of your house. Your supervisor, usually is going to tell you 2 days in advance, hey, I'm going to be in your neck of the woods. I'm going to meet you at your house at 8 o'clock in the morning so we can go on patrol. So when the supervisor shows up at your house at 8 o'clock in the morning, you shouldn't still be in your pajamas. You should be dressed and ready to go. And believe it or not, you've got some people that's just like, dude, you blew that one. It's not often they tell you to be someplace. So each officer used to get assigned office duty. So that's one of the days of the month you would go to what we call the regional office. Well, the office opens up at 8:45. So that means you need to be there by 8:30 so you can open the office at 8:45, not strolling in at 9:15. Dude, they don't ask you that often to be someplace. When they assign you detail and tell you what time to be there, it's a good idea to be there. And if you can't do that, if you can't do that, then we've had people during their probation. It's not really a probationary period. It's a traineeship. There's a 2-year traineeship when you get hired. And we've had people who did not make their traineeship, because they couldn't be any place on time.
Now that's crazy to me. I guess I just don't understand it because there's such flexibility. Like, you know how many people would enjoy and need a job like that versus being locked in 16 hours a day, mandatory overtime, and to be able to have that flexibility with my car, all my equipment at home, and I get to break up my day. So that means I could go out in the morning, check on whatever area I'm checking on for 2 to 3 hours, as you said, come back home, clock out, go take the kids to their after school program, whatever, and then clock back in and finish up my day. My God, ladies and gentlemen, please go take. But this is a test that I don't think is given as often as, like, say, corrections or sheriff or state trooper. I don't think this test comes up as often.
It's the same. So civil service is civil service. The same rules. Tests are good for 4 years or until the list is exhausted, whichever comes first. Conservation officers, environmental conservation police officers, we're not immune from everything that every police agency in the United States is going through right now. People just don't want to be police officers. They're not taking the test. You can't find people to take the test. When I took the test, you had 5,000-6,000 people taking the test. Now we're lucky if 1,100 people sign up and take the test. And then when you get the 1,100, 1,200 people who sign up, you're lucky if 900 of them pass the test. And then from that 900, you're lucky if 200 of them pass the physical agility exam, and that's something that a lot of police agencies are going through. They can't get the kids. And I say kids because I'm old now, but you just can't get people. They're just not taking the test.
So what do you think we can do to encourage our young people? Because for me, like I said, most kids today are not interested in correction. They're not interested in being police officers because they're patrolling the streets. But I think environmental police is a great job. And I don't see it being advertised or really spoken about as much as the other agencies. What do you think we could do about that?
We tried to get the word out there. Unfortunately, most of the kids who become environmental conservation police officers are kids who grow up hunting and fishing.
The ones that got tickets, $1,500 tickets.
That's 90% of our recruits are kids who grew up hunting and fishing because they're the ones that see the conservation officers. They come across them when they're out in the fields and stuff like that. Like I said, I've worked with police officers, who've been on job for 10, 15 years and never knew what a conservation officer was. Depends on where you're at in the state, because there's not that many of us. We have maybe 325 sworn members to cover all of New York State. And like the state police, we break the state up into what we call regions. State police call them troops. We call them regions. So New York State's broken up into 9 regions. Long Island being Region 1, New York City being Region 2. Here in Orange County, this is Region 3. Region 3 is made up of Orange, Rockland, Ulster, Dutchess, Sullivan, and Westchester counties. Those 7 counties make Region 3. And there's, I believe, 40 sworn members to cover those 7 counties. So when I say sworn members, that's your chief environmental conservation officer, who's a captain. He or she will have 4 zone lieutenants, because they break the region up into zones. So it'll be 4 uniform zone lieutenants. There's a bureau lieutenant, investigator lieutenant. There's usually 2 to 4 investigators, and then the rest are uniform officers. And then you have a assigned sector, and we prefer our conservation officers to live in the sector that they're assigned to. So like when I was a uniform officer here, I covered the city of Middletown, city of Newburgh, town of Mount Hope, town of Wallkill, town of Warwick was my patrol area when I was up here in Orange County. And when I was in Rockland County, I had the lower part of Rockland County.
Okay, so it's really not a lot of people that come through the academy at one time. So, okay, because it's like roughly, like you said, about 350 sworn officers. So, which means that's why I said it's not really a test that most people go to take, because it's not a large amount of people that go through the academy. Even though it's for 4 years, the list, if you're only looking at 300, 350, the turnover rate is probably very low. And if you don't get in within the first year, that list will probably be exhausted anyway.
And yes, when the list actually went for the full 4 years, that was a big problem. Because of the hiring issues we've been having, it looks like they've been giving the test like every year and a half now. Now, just to complicate things with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, like I said, they were very good to me. But just for the record, they are the only state agency that has 2 separate law enforcement arms. The second law enforcement arms are the New York State Forest Rangers, which is separate from the New York State Environmental Conservation Police Officers. To most civilians, they don't know the difference. They think we're all forest rangers, or they think we're all conservation officers. But there's 2 separate law enforcement units that have 2 distinct law enforcement responsibilities.
2 separate chiefs, 2 separate heads, department heads, commissioners.
It's 1 commissioner for the DEC, but like I was a director of law enforcement, there's a director for the forest rangers. So me and that director would be equivalent. So he'd oversee his 200 rangers. I'd oversee our 320 conservation officers. Some say it's a duplication of services. And because I'm retired, I could publicly say, in my opinion, they should merge the 2. But because of politics, the agency and the state have deemed that they will keep the 2 separate units rather than save the taxpayers money.
Okay. Well, hopefully they get it together, because we need to save some money. We need all our money back in our pockets, because these electric bills in Orange and Rockland, I don't know, is ridiculous. So let's put some money back in the budget. So we're gonna wrap things up with Mr. Bernie Rivers and give some advice to the young people today that's kind of lost and like, I don't know what to do career-wise. And if you do make a suggestion into law enforcement, what would it be and why would it be?
Again, I'm a big fan of law enforcement. That was my passion. And I wish to get some more younger people involved with it. But to the young people out there, figure out what you want to do with your lives. Don't wait until you're 26, 27, 28 years old. Life's passing you by. I've got some kids. I got this one kid that's just going into the New York City Police Academy at 27 years old because he finally decided it was time for him to do something. And now that he's there, he's realized what he's.
Hey guys, so we're back. We were having some technical difficulties with Bernie's equipment. I tell you, sometimes technology just is, we old people, so forgive us. But Bernie, again, just close out with what you would give the young version of you or recommend to the young people who are trying to find. We had actually ended off with you saying something about a gentleman in the police academy who was 27 years old and realized that he missed his opportunity in his prime. So give the encouragement and what you recommend for these young ladies and men to do if they want to be in law enforcement.
My recommendation is make a plan. Figure out where you want to be 5 years from now. That's what's gotten me through my whole career. I set a goal. I hit that goal. I set my next goal. Okay. And when I say set a 5-year plan, I don't mean wait till year 5 to do the next 5. Okay. Because come year 3, I'm planning on the 5 years. So when I hit that 5-year mark, I can move on. That has kept me one step ahead of the game. It allowed me to go from being a correction officer to an environmental conservation police officer, to a uniformed to an investigator, to a uniformed lieutenant, to the chief conservation officer, right up to director of law enforcement.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Guys, charge it to my brain, not my heart, with the technology issues today. And we look forward to seeing you again on When the Blue Comes Up. So thanks for sticking around, and we'll chat soon.